So what we're going to do is we're going to use some short stories and the information in them, and we're going to try to figure out what's going to happen next. So this story should seem kind of familiar. We have read it before. This story is called Bike Rides. I don't think I will ever forget riding my bike as a child. I remember the freedom and the wind in my hair. I was outside riding my bike as often as I possibly could. My friends and I would pedal for hours. There were
I
some
have a
trails at the end of our
question.
neighborhood. The pavement ended and the dirt and rocks started. Such a bumpy ride. Such a daring thing for my friends and I to do, we thought. On weekends, we knew where there was a big pit. We would pack a snack and a thermos of water and head out. We felt so old. When we arrived at the pit, we would coast down the side. We would get off and push our bikes to the edge of the bottom of the pit. I
You
remember
read that
pedaling as
to us.
fast as we could to get up ahead of steam to try to make it up the steep edge. It seemed like we never made it on our first try. When we got out of the pit, we would ride our bikes as far as we could until we couldn't pedal anymore. We would push them home. Those were the days. We slept so good at night. My bike allowed me to be adventurous and to explore the world around me in a somewhat safe environment. I will never forget that old bike. I guess it is someplace in the garage. I will also never forget my childhood friends. So that story we read last week. Sorry about your mic, Sebastian. Make sure you're paying attention up here, though. So every prediction starts off with a question. You'd have to look at things like what happens in the story. You could look at some of the text features like the title, or if they give you a picture to go along with it. And sometimes you'll start to wonder something. We'll see, there's a video here for us to watch. We'll go ahead and watch it. So go ahead, really quickly turn off your cameras so that the video looks nice and smooth for everyone.
Roll, roll.
Every prediction starts with a question. First, you will look at the title and the text features and decide what do you wonder about this passage. I think to myself, I wonder if this passage is about learning to ride your bike. You can decorate your wonder cloud if you'd like.
Okay, like I said, that was a short video. So we're going to take a look at the passage. And what we're going to do, sorry, that's the next one. Who can tell me, what's one question you have about this passage about bike rides? What's one question that you might have? Haley.
Who is the person?
Okay, who's the person? They don't tell us who, right? We don't even know if it's a boy or a girl. What's another question we might have about this passage? Messiah?
Where she will be riding her bike?
Well, they told us where they used to ride it. Do you mean where she rides the bike now? Okay, so where she rides it now. Violet, what do you think? What's a question you might have?
Who were her friends?
Who were her friends? They never tell us names. Adine? What do you think? What's a question you might have, Heidin?
how the bike looks like.
Okay, what the bike looks like, because they don't describe it very well for us. Kylie.
If they'll have any more adventures on that bike.
If they'll have any more adventures on that bike. That's a good question. What if I asked, do they ride their bike anymore?
That's what.
Is there any kind of proof where we can kind of figure out whether they ride their bike or not? Do they tell us something that lets us know if they're still riding their bike or not?
No.
Let's see. We know that this first part of the story was when they were little, when they were younger. We know that at the end is when they start talking about when they were older, when they're grown up. But look at the end. My bike allowed me to be adventurous and explore the world around me in a somewhat safe environment. I will never forget that old bike. I guess it's someplace in the garage. If they don't know where their bike is anymore, do you think they use it a lot? No, I see you're shaking your head, Bella. No, I agree. If they don't know where it is, they probably don't use it very much. Now, after this person has all these memories and remembers all of this, just with a show of hands, who thinks that they might try to take their bike out for a ride? When they see it, when they start remembering, who thinks they might try to get the bike working again or try to ride it again? Show of hands. So put your hand up if you think they'd try again.
Me.
Okay, so a good amount of us. I agree with that. I think that after remembering all the fun they had with their friends, that this person might try to go and find their bike or try to get it working again, or maybe even go on a ride if the bike's still working. Yes, Nakai. Did you have a question? Okay. All right. So what you're going to do is we have our second story here. Again, this one should seem familiar. The Big Girl Bike.
Mine's still loading.
Okay. I'm going to read the story to you, and then here inside the cloud, you're going to write down something that you wonder about that story. Okay? So while I'm reading, if you already come up with the question, you're going to click in here and you're going to go ahead and write down what your question is. Yes, Kylie.
I was gonna say that me and Kaylee cannot because my tire I have a flat tire of mine because like there's a hole in my tire and then Kaylee's tire blew up
Oh,
because
okay.
he kept on putting air in it.
All right. Bailey, you have a question. Can't hear you, Bailey. It's still muted.
Can we color our cloud when we're done wondering?
On a piece of paper, we could, but on this, there's not a way that we can color without covering up our words. So unfortunately, this one we'll have to leave it blank.
Okay.
Okay, so like I said, I'm going to read the story for you. And while I'm reading, if you already come up with the question, you're going to come to this next slide, slide 8, and write down what your question is in here. The Big Girl Bike. My most supreme memory of my dad happened almost 4 years ago now. I remember waking up on Christmas morning to the most marvelous sight. I saw it sitting there, right there under the Christmas tree. It was so pink, so purple, so sparkly, so pretty. It was my very own big girl bike. I knew it was a big girl bike because I looked at it and saw no training wheels. I was delighted and couldn't wait to try it out. We're going to read the story, and then you're going to think of a question for the story. Okay, Alexa? Okay. As soon as I opened the rest of my gifts, I was out the door. I could already see myself riding all alone, the wind blowing in my hair, living my best life. Before I knew it, I was flicking up the kickstand and hopping on my brand new bike. Boom. I fell between the concrete and my bike. I had never felt so overcome. It was after my incident when my dad told me I wasn't going to be able to just hop on and go. New things are not like that in life, he whispered with a little smile. He added that I needed this thing called patience. I was so confused. I didn't understand why I couldn't just ride my new bike like normal, all by myself. He modeled patience, although I did not realize that until I looked back on it years later. My dad spent the afternoon with me, pushing my bike and letting go. It turns out all of the falls, knee scrapes, ice packs, and bandages were well worth the liberating feeling of riding my bike with no training wheels. I was such a kid. On the next slide, I want you to go ahead and write down a question that you have about that story. It asks us to make a prediction about that story. So predictions are, again, when you look at what happened in the story and you try to figure out what happens next. So again, we're going to watch a short video that's going to tell us a little bit more about that.
We are going to make a prediction. We start by looking at the title and the text feature. Remember, my prediction doesn't have to be correct. It's important that I'm thinking about the passage before I start reading it. First, I gather 3 details from the passage. I notice the detail that there's a picture of a bike, the title, and there are labels on the bike. Then I think about my personal experience. I have a bike at home. From there, I'm going to combine my details from the passage with my experience to create my prediction. I predict that the passage is about the parts of a bike.
So that example there was of a prediction they made before they read the story. They looked at the title, they looked at the picture, and they thought, well, there's a picture of a bike, and the title is Bike Rides, so maybe that's what the story's about. Now, a prediction doesn't have to be correct. It's a guess you're taking. But you want to make sure that you do use facts to kind of back up your guess, your prediction. So what you're going to do is you're going to use that second story, the big girl bike, where she got the bike for Christmas and she tried riding it. It didn't work out very well, but her dad helped her and eventually she learned how to ride the bike. What you're going to do is you're going to make a prediction. So first, like they did in the video, you're going to write down 3 things that happened in the story. You're going to write down 3 things that happened in the story that you remember. And then here, it asks you have to use something that you already know. So let's say if this, like the first story, the one about bike rides where he misses his friends. Something that I already know is that sometimes, yeah, you can miss your friends. You want to hang out with them, but you can't, or they're busy, or whatever the case might be. So I know that you can miss your friends. So my prediction might be something like, I think he's going to call his friends and try to hang out with them again because he misses them. I want you all to go ahead and use the big girl bike to make a prediction. You're going to write down 3 details, 3 things from the story. You're going to write down one thing that you already know, maybe something that happened to you. And then you're going to write down your prediction. What do you think will happen next? And we're doing it about this one, the big girl bike, where she gets the bike, she tries to ride it, and it doesn't go very well for her. So what do you think would happen next? I want you to start filling out those boxes. Detail 1, detail 2, detail 3. What is something that's happened to you that is something like the story? And then, what do you think will happen next? So, we're going to go ahead and finish this up for homework. Remember, you're going to look at the story, the one about the girl who gets her bike on Christmas and then needs to learn how to ride it. You're going to put in 3 details from the story. You're going to write down something that happened in your life that reminds you of what happened in the story. And then you're going to write down what you think will happen next.